Thierry Henry is undoubtedly a legendary football player, but his managerial career has rivaled that of, well, Gary Neville, unfortunately.
It's a great finish to this show. I mean, we finish so
What's up? I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV, where today we're taking a look at where things went wrong for Thierry Henry at Monaco. Shout out to subscriber Terrence Sakwa for asking me to do a video on this situation. Happy to oblige. And if you have a video request, hit me up on Twitter and maybe I can make that happen. Alright? Let's get started. First off, context is important here, so let's look at what Henry was inheriting at Monaco. Henry arrived during not just an injury crisis, but an injury apocalypse, with around 15 first-team players out with injuries at the time of his arrival, including important squad members such as Ronnie Lopes, one of Monaco's best attackers last season, who didn't return until January. Players would return from injury, while others would get injured again, leaving Henry with an injury bill of about 10 to 12 players at all times during his tenure. It's also important to remember that this Monaco team that Henry took over was nowhere close to resembling the one that broke PSG's Ligue 1 title streak and made it to the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2017. The likes of Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, Bakayoko, Mendy, Moutinho, Lamar, and Fabinho had all moved on within 2 seasons of Monaco's triumph in Ligue 1, leaving a skeleton of the former team, and with replacements like Tielemans and Keita Balde and Steven Jovetic all failing to improve the squad in the following seasons, the downward spiral had begun. Speaking of reinforcements failing, World Cup starlet Alexander Golovin and Belgian international Nasser Chadli were brought in, among others, in the 2018 summer window. So, with Monaco floundering domestically and in the Champions League, they managed to secure just 7 points in league play and lost both of their Champions League run-ins. Despite being completely stripped of talent from his squad, and the club bringing in subpar reinforcements for him, which was of course a point of contention between Leonardo Jardim and the Monaco board, Jardim was sacked on October 11th, 2018. Immediately, there were rumblings about former Monaco man Thierry Henry being given the task of righting the ship, so to speak, and 1 week later, he was appointed, with his only previous experience being a part-time coaching role with Arsenal's youth teams, while he was still doing punditry for Sky Sports, and then of course his assistant coaching role with the Belgian national team. Some thought that perhaps his hero status in Monaco as a former player and a footballing legend for France in general would be enough to get the slumping, injury-riddled AS Monaco side to perk up and put some performances in. Others believed that his lack of experience in being the head coach of a club while also stepping into the footballing equivalent of a raging house fire, I guess, would be disastrous for him, and a massive risk for his first managerial role.
I think in a way it's a gamble for him as well, because if he fails badly, I'm not sure how you recover from that.
Despite that, right off the bat, Henry probably got Monaco's fans' minds racing, referencing how he had learned professionalism from Arsene Wenger, a former Monaco manager who delivered a French First Division title, it was called back then, and Coupe de France. Henry didn't stop there though, as he claimed that he was looking to use what he had learned under Pep Guardiola at Barcelona as a reference point for his approach going forward with Monaco. Given the circumstances, what with a squad that had all of its top talent picked off and the remaining players were mostly injured, perhaps he should have picked his words a little more carefully and sort of tempered expectations. So, besides his bad luck with injuries, there's 2 other aspects that contributed to his colossal failure at Monaco. He didn't endear himself to the players, blaming them for all of Monaco's failings, and he didn't show much tactical acumen either. There's man managers and there's tacticians in football, and he was neither. Let's talk about how he set up the team and had them performing, as Henry would most typically play with a 4-3-2-1 or 4-5-1, depending on how you want to look at it, though he would employ a 3-4-3 every once in a while as well. The back three was especially naive of Henry to employ, given that their star defender, Camille Glick, really lacks in the pace department, and the Monaco defense was exposed time and time again. Similarly, Golovin, who operates best either tucked behind the striker or on the wing, was employed as a striker at times. This was more likely down to the fact that Falcao and other strikers were injured, but wouldn't it have been best to play Golovin in a position where he's most effective? Even if that means bringing in a young striker from the reserves even? Perhaps partially due to the slew of injuries he was dealing with, he never seemed to have a consistent game plan, let alone formation, and the team often looked like they didn't really understand the system they were playing. He was expected, if anything, to improve the attack of Monaco, who until that point had only scored 9 goals in 9 Ligue 1 matches. However, in the 12 Ligue 1 matches Henry took charge of, Monaco's attack actually regressed, scoring the same amount of goals as they did under Jardim, 9, with 3 more matches to do so. Under Henry, they only scored more than twice on 2 occasions. In fact, this chart from Fansided shows how Monaco's attack regressed in almost every department. Goals per game were down alongside expected goals per game, along with shots and shots on target per game. While he was with the Belgian national team, the attacker spoke of how influential he had been and how great the advice he gave them was, how it improved them. In fact, following his sacking, Eden Hazard said that he would always be more than welcomed in the Belgium national team setup. But when it came to setting up his team in order for them to attack effectively, he clearly wasn't capable of doing so. Effective in giving advice, like he did for Belgium, but ineffective in implementing attacking tactics. Defensively, Monaco regressed as well. Again, shout out to Fansided for this chart. As you can see, the shots and shots on target are almost exactly the same during Henry's tenure in comparison to Jardim's start to the season, though more dangerous opportunities were afforded to the opposition under Henry, leading to a much higher goals conceded per game in comparison to when Jardim was in charge. Actually, if you want to put a number on it, under Jardim, Monaco conceded 13 goals from 9 matches in Ligue 1, while under Henry, they conceded 21 in 12 matches. A regression in both defense and, more troublingly, offense. Problems at both ends of the pitch. But perhaps the biggest failure of all was Henry's man management and so-called lack of professionalism, as some French media outlets have put it, as Henry's relationship with the Monaco players and the rest of the staff was seemingly strained, to say the least. Apparently he was completely unwilling to listen to anyone else's ideas within his staff. He started with optimism, realizing that things wouldn't change overnight at Monaco. However, as time went on, that optimism quickly turned to frustration with his players, exhibiting a lack of patience on the sidelines. Every misplaced pass, failed attack, and goal conceded would lead to Henry's arms thrown up in the air in frustration, or the Monaco boss slumping deeper into his jacket, sulking in his technical area of the pitch, etc. The more that time progressed, the more poor results would roll in, and the more that Henry had a hard time hiding his frustration with his players, many of them extremely young and impressionable, and, for lack of a better word, sensitive or emotionally fragile, and more in need of an arm around the shoulder than public derision or embarrassment. To boot, his sulking attitude on the touchline was adopted by his players on the pitch and showed in the way that they played. But back to the public embarrassment of his players. One such moment came during a Champions League press conference in which Henry attended with 17-year-old defender Benoit Badiachil. Upon leaving, Badiachil didn't push in his chair, which was met with a look of disgust and bewilderment as Henry waited for Badiachil to come back and tuck his chair in front of the gathered press before Henry would move a muscle. As an isolated incident, this wouldn't be a big deal at all. In fact, it would be commonplace back in the day. But the fact was, it wasn't an isolated incident. Goal France notes that Monaco players would go to the board regularly with complaints about how Henry was treating them in the locker room, on the training pitch, and even from his technical area during matches. In fact, one source, and I put that in quotation marks because they chose to remain anonymous, so take what you will from this, said that during one match Henry screamed, quote, He is supposed to be worth 10 million? All of the substitutes heard, the message he sent to the players was very negative. Again, nothing crazy if it was an isolated incident, but if the claims here are true that Henry would regularly disrespect the players, put them down in the locker room, play favorites, then these claims certainly fly in the face of the respect and professionalism that Henry said he learned from Arsene Wenger and wanted to instill at Monaco. Following that 5-1 loss to Strasbourg, Monaco were then bounced from the Coupe de France by second division side FC Metz, 3-1, and at home no less. Following this match, Henry was unwilling to take the blame for the sticky situation once again, and a few days later at the press conference before Monaco's match with Dijon on the weekend, Henry said, quote, "There were not many people at training yesterday. We have cut the squad down to size. At one point or another, you need guys who want to save the club, not just think about their own futures." When asked who these players were that had been demoted to the reserves, he said that there were, quote, "too many to name." Around the same time as his press conference, apparently some of the senior members of the team called a meeting with Monaco officials, voicing their complaints about Henry and how he conducted himself, his lack of professionalism in training, how he treated the players, and his tactical ineptitude. One day later, it was announced that Henry had been suspended, which was strictly procedural, and then a day after that, Leonardo Jardim was reinstated as the Monaco head coach. What a circus. And here we are, with Monaco fans probably feeling as though this is Groundhog Day, waking up with Jardim back in charge, and the club having made absolutely zero progress in the 3-ish month spell that Henry commandeered. So what's your take on the situation? Is it Henry's fault that he was sacked, or do you find it was unfair and that he was fighting a losing battle from the get-go? Let me know in the comments. Let's talk about it. But other than that, I thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to subscribe for more like it, plus Roots of the Rivalry videos, where we explore why certain teams hate each other, in-depth player bios, and so much more. I'm Adrian, this is Rabona TV, and take care.